When I was a young kid, I lived around a lot of police officers and a lot of firefighters. As a young kid, there was cops that would bring their police cars to their homes every single day, and I'd watch them pull up with those lights on the top of the roof, and I thought that was just so cool. And I dedicated when I was a young kid that I wanted to go into law enforcement because I wanted to not only make a difference, but I wanted to drive one of those really cool police cars. So you fast forward to college, I decided I wanted to become a cop, but I didn't want to wait until I was 21. And so I met with the chief of police. His name was Chief Couch. And I said, Chief Couch, I want to become a cop and I don't want to wait till I'm 21 to do it. I want to do it now. And by the way, then I was 19 years old. Chief Couch said, well, you need a few things. You need a letter from the Attorney General and you need a letter from the Xavier University board allowing you to be sworn in as a police officer. Well, with my determination, I decided to go and do that, and I had both of those letters in hand, signed, sealed, and delivered within 2 weeks of that meeting. Chief Couch then sponsored me through the academy, and I became a police officer, one of the youngest to be sworn in the state of Ohio at the humble age of 19 years old. I worked for a few years in the city of Cincinnati, and then transferred my certification back to Colorado. Now, the interesting thing about that is I had done so many things in the police department in Colorado, but I realized I wanted to more make a difference, and I was sick of arresting the same people every single weekend, every single day. And so I said, how do I make a bigger impact, a bigger difference? And so I Googled who was my chief's boss. I decided I wanted to actually run the government. And so when I found out that it was a man or a group of people called city managers, I decided that I wanted to become a city manager. So what did I do? I got out that Rolodex or the email and Googled who is the city manager of Denver. And I emailed my city manager. His name was Manuel Escabel. And I told the city manager in an email that I wanted to become a city manager. Matter of fact, not only did I email him that same night, but I waited till 8 a.m. the next morning, and I called him and left a message and said, hi, sir, my name is Murphy Robinson. I'm one of your police officers, and I want to be a city manager. Would you call me back? Now, in a Disney scenario, he called me back and everything was lovely. That's not what happened. Matter of fact, I got a call. It wasn't a call. I got a visit from my chief, the chief of police, that night at my roll call. Now, for those who don't know what a roll call is, that's when police officers come, get their duties for the day, and start their shift. The chief of police doesn't really ever show up at night roll calls unless he needs something. He showed up to see me that night. And he said, Murphy, why in the world are you calling my boss to talk to him about what? And I said, Chief, I wasn't going to be a police officer my whole career. I want to become a city manager. And I called him to figure out how you do it. And he said, well, had you told me, I would have blessed it. And so I bless it. Why don't you go ahead and meet with him? And that was the start of my career. That very moment, the investment the chief put in me and the confidence that he had in me to meet with his boss to help me learn in my career changed my life. And that type of mentorship you don't often see. I then met with city manager Manuel Escabel, who also made a huge impact in my life. That city manager met with me once a month for an entire year, giving me an assignment each time and saying, Murphy, don't come back here unless you complete the assignment. And it was an assignment that was looking up laws, looking up policies, understanding finance of the city. And then his final assignment to me was, Murphy, if you want to be a city manager, you need to go get your master's degree. Within 2 weeks of that time, I was enrolled in my master's program for public administration in the University of Colorado. At that point, he knew I was serious, and so he gave me an option. It was almost like a blue pill and a red pill kind of moment. He said, Murphy, you have a decision to make. You can continue to rise up in the ranks as a police officer, or you can quit your job as a police officer, leave your pension behind, leave everything behind, and you can come be an intern for me and see where that goes. So what did I do? I prayed about it. I'm a man of faith, and so it was really important that I consult the Lord on everything I do and, of course, consult my family. And I said, I think I want to do this. And so I made a decision in that moment to go ahead and become an intern, dropping everything I had worked for as a police officer so that I can learn how to run a city. I instantly started to get my master's degree program going. I was working as a police officer at nighttime while doing my master's degree program, and then transitioned into a full-time internship with Manuel Escobel. Now, what's funny about that full-time internship is the first day he said, Murphy, what you have to do as your first assignment is you have to write a grant to the state petitioning them for your salary. Because there was no salary. There was no money set aside to pay me as an intern. And so the first order of business was to write my first grant ever for my own salary. Now, I didn't know how to write a grant. I didn't know the first things about grants. So I went to the bookstore and got Grant Writing for Dummies. And I read that book and I wrote my grant for my salary for the Department of Local Affairs. And then from there, Manuel gave me an assignment to follow and look at every single department in the city and be an extra set of hands for them. And from that moment, I knew that I had found my niche. I was able to look at everything from finance to, utilities, to even going to the dog kennel and cleaning up feces in the dog kennel and understanding the complexity of running a city-run dog kennel. It was all on the table. What was cool is I did something that I was not asked to do, which I took notes every single department I went to about how we could make it more efficient. And I ended up being able to save the city a few $1 million in some recommendations I made with my internship. Now, with that recommendation came a lot of responsibility. I said to Manuel, hey, here's some recommendations on how we can save the city money, how we can kind of move things around to make more efficient governance. And he said, great, go do it. And I said, well, now hold on, Mr. City Manager. I'm just an intern. How am I going to do all these things as an intern? He said, well, you're not just an intern, you're a city manager intern. And if you want to be a city manager, you have to know how to lead by influence. And so it's not about the actual title that you have, but it's about the influence that you have to make decisions. And so he said, go do it. And so I made a lot of mistakes, but I then went to the rest of the director staff and with influence changed a lot about our city, which in turn saved us a few $1 million. At that point, I escalated through the process and was recommended to be the assistant city manager of general services for the city of Brighton. And so I skipped 9 levels of management because I was willing to stick my neck out and do some things that others probably wouldn't have done. Now, I'm going to pause here because it's really important to know that through this mentorship of the city manager and the mentorship of the chief and all the other directors that I had that I was very blessed to have, I also had another business mentor named Charlie Gallagher who taught me a very important lesson through this time, and that was anytime you want to go and be a leader and you need to make decisions as a leader, you need to act like a turtle. And Charlie at the time, who owned a big business, a big M&A business, he used to have turtles sitting around his office everywhere. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you mean act like a turtle? And he said, Murph, anytime a turtle needs to move forward, he has to stick his neck out and be willing to have danger upon him because the only thing that protects a turtle is his shell. But as soon as he sticks his neck out, he's vulnerable. But in order to move forward, you got to be vulnerable sometimes. He said, so you in business have to always remember to be able to stick your neck out because you're going to be able to do what others are not. And so I took that and I applied that to the rest of my life and frankly, the rest of my business career and my public safety career and public sector career, frankly. And that is how I started my career as a city manager. I then went to the city of Englewood. I was recruited away to the city of Englewood where I managed a large team and had to make some really tough decisions like getting rid of the fire department. And that was not easy. But through me sticking my neck out, the ability to do what others were not willing to do, I made a name for myself across the state. And so from that point forward, I was kind of known around the state as the up-and-coming city manager or the up-and-coming public official that was willing to get things done. I was recruited then from the city of Denver to come run the Department of General Services, where within 2 years I was appointed as the deputy mayor and the chief operating officer for the city and county of Denver. Now, as the city manager of the city of Denver, now there was no city manager, so we call it the chief operating officer. I was in control of all operations for the city and county of Denver. Now, do you think a person can actually control all operations for 16,000 people? The answer to that is no. I have a mantra that I live by. Every time that you get promoted in a company and you get a C-suite position or you get a leadership position, the higher you go, the less control you actually have and the more influence you have to use. And so as the COO of the city and county of Denver, it was really important that I lead by influence and lead with compassion and understand where people were at. And so as the city's chief operating officer, we dealt with so many complex issues, whether it was finance, whether it was, public safety issues. All those things came upon on my desk as we went through that. But I will tell you, that position didn't last long because I needed to step into the public safety director position where I oversaw police, fire, sheriff, and 911. The mayor asked me to step in to that position after really looking for someone nationwide, and we couldn't find a person that matched the things that the mayor was looking for. And he looked at me and said, "Murphy, you have the influence of the officers. You have the influence of the sheriff deputies and the firefighters. I really need you to take this on." And so I ended up leading as one of the youngest police commissioners and fire commissioners in the country, if not the youngest. I ended up leading the city and county of Denver in our public safety effort. This was right as the COVID pandemic started to happen. And frankly, as George Floyd started to happen. All times of major chaos, all times of major leadership decisions and issues that really had lasting impact. And, I think all of those things we'll get into in later podcasts, but I will tell you my entire story and the leadership ability that I've been blessed with all speaks to what chaos looks like and how to handle it with leadership. Murphy's Law is all about what can go wrong will go wrong, but I'd like us to look at it differently. Murphy's Law is really about even if something goes wrong, if you're prepared for it, you can work and lead through it. And that's what this podcast is all about. We're looking forward to meeting leaders who not only have led through chaos and led through hard times, but have been successful in leading through influence, who also have the ability to prepare for the things that you can't see. And so I'm looking forward to being with you over this next season and really leaning into and going deep in what does leadership look like in the chaotic times of today, but how do we make sure that we come out stronger for it? My name's Murphy Robinson, and I'm proud to lead your podcast, Murphy's Law, and I'm really looking forward into this journey with you.